We are about to embark on an immersive journey through the corridors of our minds. Stand by as we prepare for departure.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to the Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast adventure. Our journey will begin in just a moment. Inhale deeply and exhale. Our voyage takes us on a captivating tour, diving deep into the intricate layers of our thoughts and imagination. Brace yourselves for the complexities of our evolution. For a safe and enjoyable journey, stay seated. Secure your helmet and protective goggles, and keep hands, feet, and legs inside while the ride is moving. Now relax and enjoy.
Today we have with us Ranjitha Raghunathan, and she is here as a chess player trained to think ahead, right? Not just in the moment, but how are we thinking steps ahead? She's got the experience with Salesforce and working with Google, and she's now a founder, a new mom, congrats by the way, and working on building something real while her life is still really full. And I think that's what's so important in this conversation that we're having today is that busy work, right? And just staying super busy. So, and how do we break through that and actually get real movement? So, welcome, Ronnie. We're so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for the kind words. And yeah, like life has been incredible in the best ways possible. In the last year, I was prior to this at Google, and now I'm a new mom. I have a startup that I'm building right now, and also a community for female founders that I'm building myself. So excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
It's amazing. And it's a common theme with a lot of people that we have on the show, right? It's like all the th we're doing all the things, right? We're juggling all those things. And what we're going to talk about today is not just all the things you're doing, but how you're thinking about it. And that's what we really want to kind of like look inside your brain a little bit and look inside your mind of like how you do it, right? And how you break through that idea of busy, right? Of just doing the things. I like to call it the rocking chair syndrome, right? Of like rocking back and forth. And then at the end of the day, you stand up and wonder why you're in the same spot. So I'd love to kind of hear from you what that difference is between being just busy and actually having that forward movement.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love this rocking chair syndrome that you just mentioned. I'm gonna probably steal this from you, but that's
Do
amazing.
it.
And it's so true, right? Like, because oftentimes, as anyone, like anyone in corporate, any new parent, or just you as an adult, I think oftentimes we're very reactive to things, right? We're always putting out fires, we're always chasing the next thing, and there's no real moment where you just sit down and say, intentionally, these are my goals, and this is what I'm gonna do to actually check them off my list. We all have lists. I have like four notebooks in front of me right now. They're all full of lists that I want to check off. But every day, what I end up doing, there are a couple of moments where you feel like you're just moving just because you have to move versus moving because you need to move towards a goal. And what really helps in grounding that intention is to first set your goal. And a goal could look like something that's, 5 year down the line, 10 years down the line. And I don't think anyone has the mental bandwidth today to set a 10-year goal. But realistically, the goal that helps you move forward is you saying, you know what, in the next week, this is what I need to do. And this is the progress that I need to have made. And these are all the things that I'm going to do, actionable steps that I need to do to get to that goal. I think that's like a primary difference between understanding and moving intentionally versus just moving, reacting to something and putting out fires on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's a great call out to point out that like sometimes dreaming or goal setting too far into the future, especially in such a changing world, right? It can feel really overwhelming and daunting. I know I always challenge my members and students in the goals group to think beyond well, we do a goal setting thing at the beginning of every year and I have them like think really big and if anything is possible, right? But then we have to work and that in itself can be challenging, like you said, but then we work back to all the way to what am I doing in a year, in six
Yep.
months, next month, next week, today, right? Like, and then we bring it back to tangible, like, what am I doing right here, right now? So, how do we recognize within ourselves, do you think, between am I just doing busy work or am I actually making progress?
Yeah, and that, you brought up a really good point, right? Like it's starting big and then ending it down to like your day-to-day things.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're, what I've seen is, it's all about how my mind feels, right? When you're doing just busy work and not essentially making progress, you end up being so burnt out and feeling supremely stressed because you've not taken a step towards achieving your goals. But sometimes when you are actually, in fact, intentionally checking off the list to make and get to your goal, you just feel
Mhm.
different. Like the sense of accomplishment kicks in then, as opposed to you just feeling a sense of tired and like I'm so stressed out, like I don't know how to get there. And then there starts this whole loop of, I what am I even doing every day? Like, am I even making progress? Like, am I going the right direction? That's when self-doubt also kicks in. But if you're able to say, I have 5 things that I need to do today, and I'm going to do it irrespective, and this is how I'm going to accomplish it, it gives you that sense of accomplishment. So on a day-to-day basis, it's very, very important to say, I need to do X, Y, and Z, and this is how I'm going to do it. And it's such a cliche to say, write it down and like it helps, but it really does. And I think that's why it's a cliche, right? Like it really does to help and pen it down. So do it. And once you start checking that thing off your list, you end up feeling far more accomplished at the end of the day than burnt out at the end of it.
1,000%. Well, and I want to kind of call out something you said that's really important is how it feels. Because I really do believe that our subconscious sometimes knows before we logically and consciously know, right? Because
Yeah.
oh, I'm doing the things, but it doesn't feel right, but I don't feel good about it. Well, maybe it's because the things that we're doing aren't in alignment with what it is we actually want to be creating, achieving, or the way we want to be showing up in the world. Because, they say that's where anxiety comes from, right? Is like that misalignment of like,
Yep.
I'm doing the thing over here, but my values are over here.
You're 100% right. Like that, I don't think that misalignment is talked about enough. And for me personally, like my mind and my heart always need to be in alignment for me to even operate at my 100%. So very quickly, it's easy for me to say, oh my God, like they're actually not aligned and there needs to be something that needs to change. And I also think it's very important to not dwell on things. Like I say very easily that you need to move on from things very quickly, but I think everyone needs to have a certain routine and a certain way, the way at which they operate to actually move on from things. And that helps them be accomplished and feel accomplished a lot more at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, building in those routines is so important. Like I always teach, like have a review, like build in reviews
Yep.
somewhere, whether it's end of every week on Friday, beginning of the week on Sunday or Monday, monthly, bi-weekly, quarterly, whatever, of course yearly, but then something more routinely and more regularly because otherwise, how else, I like, being a chess player, not me, I don't actually know how to play chess, but but I know how to play chess in life, right? Like thinking ahead, project planning, all of that. Like how do we use those skills and how do we adopt that mindset of a chess player in life with our goals that so that it makes today and tomorrow and next week feel so much easier.
Yeah, it's not about avoiding the obstacles or avoiding the
Mhm.
challenges. It's not about avoiding all the conflicts that are coming your way. Like life is beautiful because of it, right? Like if everything is so easy, I think it's just boring. And like I always want to change, and I always want to trick something into making it a little bit more fun and interesting and thrilling. But I think in when you're able to sort of foresee and predict what's coming, or like when you have a goal in front of you, I think it's important for you to sort of think, okay, so what are the possible obstacles that are coming my way ahead of it? And once you're able to say, okay, it's X, Y, and Z, your mind is going to think of way to mitigate it. Like you don't have to actually plan and stop all these obstacles from happening, but your mindset automatically sort of enables you to feel ready to tackle those. And in just being able to say, there's my goal, and these are all the things that I foresee from stopping you from achieving these goals. And this is what I'm going to do today. these are the things that are in my control, and then there are the things that are not in my control, and this is how I'm going to work towards what's under my control. I think that clear distinction is really, really helpful in how you think about life, the game of chess.
Yeah, I don't think that's talked about enough, what you're saying. And I really want to make sure those listening are hearing that planning your failures ahead of time allow us to better like just completely smash them out
Yep,
of the way, right? Like if I'm gonna go drive to the grocery store and I'm like, it's going to be the perfect drive. There's going to be no
yep.
stop signs. No one's going to cut me off. And it's going to be like, I'm going to get there in 3 minutes, whatever. I don't know how far the grocery store is for you, right? But like, I'm going to get there super fast. There's not even going to be a stop sign in my way. What's going to happen the first time I had a stop sign? Oh my gosh, what's going on? Why is this
Disappointment.
happening to me? Right?
Exactly. Exactly. You're 100% right. Like I think it's all about setting realistic expectations. And oftentimes I'm also very delusional, by the way. Like I'm
Same.
all about being a delusional person, but I'm also a realist, but I'm also eternal optimistic. So I
Mm.
know that irrespective of what obstacle or challenge or anything that's coming my way, I know that I'll figure it out. And I think it's really helpful for me to know that because then it doesn't matter what's coming my way, right? Like it's the confidence is in my ability to figure things out as opposed to in the universe that nothing's ever going to go wrong, because I think that's an unrealistic expectation and it's also under my control. So I completely agree. Like it's all about setting that like actual realistic expectations and be prepared, right? Like there's only so much you can be prepared. It doesn't mean you're going to have to go to the grocery store and stock your garage with everything that you need, supplies for the next 2 years. No, there's only so much you can do. But with
Yeah.
that said, there are going to be things that are outside your control. And, having been in sales and having played chess competitively, I think it lets me know that you could do everything right and still lose the deal. And that's just part of life. All you need to do is show up every day and make sure you're better than yesterday, and life goes on.
Yeah, I think that's a huge, huge differentiator to be able to make is what's actually in my control. Like I know my ability to figure it out no matter what will come my way versus I expect the world to be perfect. I expect everyone else to be
Yeah.
perfect.
Absolutely, yeah. We're only setting ourselves up for disappointment. If that's the expectation, like I can't even expect anything out of anyone, like even my little dog, right? Like I can't expect her to just operate the way that I want her to. And it's just how it works. And you just need to be okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be the first to admit, because we can laugh about it and it's funny, but in reality, we still do like I still do it. Like right now I'm going to realty school, right? I'm learning all about real estate.
Oh
And in
my
my
God.
mind, I built out this perfect project plan of how I was going to get through all the content in the chapters, and it ended up being way more robust than I anticipated. And then here I am, like inner critic, like pounding the gavel on my own brain of like, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. Like,
Yeah.
wait, hold on, I have a question. Like, hold on, I didn't know going in, right? Though,
Hmm.
like how much content there would be. I'd never gone through that before. I've gone to college, but I haven't gone to realty school. So like in my mind, I'm like, oh, I've also done online courses. So I'm like, okay, here's the expectation of it's probably like an online course. I can spend like an hour or two a day on it.
Yep.
It'll be like super easy. And here it's like this whole other language and math and things I've never touched before. And even I've never bought or sold a home myself, much less help someone else do it. So it's like learning French, right? When I've never
Yeah.
spoken French, right? It's those expectations are truly like can make or break an experience.
No, 100%. And also, by the way, Lindsay, more power to you for sticking to the realty close. The course. I've taken a stab at it twice.
Have
And
you?
literally, it's the worst thing ever.
It's
I
so
always
much.
drop out after like 3 weeks. I'm like, oh my God, this is so much. Like, there's so much mundane content that's so boring. But yeah, like realistic expectations, and I always think a lot of it has to do with giving yourself grace, right? Like it's okay
Mm,
to drop the ball. It's okay to not accomplish everything that you set out to accomplish that day. We all have bad days. We we all wake up, on days feeling a certain way. We all, and our 100% looks different on all days, right? So, and that's okay. And I think it's important to recognize that, yesterday I said I was going to do three things, but I actually did only half a thing. And I have the things that I'm compounded to do today. So it's about that bridging the gap too, because there
Mm,
is a lot of pressure on women, especially, to just be that hustling and like, just keep going after things and look at all the accomplished women that's out there and setting these different standards. And we're already always fighting for a seat at the table, right? So I think there is a lot of pressure for us to be at our like absolute 150%, not even 100%. But one day it's actually okay. Like I think we'll all be fine. And we're all, in fact, I would say our 50% is actually a lot of people's 100%. So I think we'll be totally incredible at it, nevertheless.
totally. I couldn't agree more. And I think like, for the audience of productivity with peace of mind, like we are high achievers, right? We have a lot of ideas. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And the gap that I find is in exactly that. We set the plan, we block it out, we got it on the calendar, and then when we don't meet that exactly or life happens, we get upset. So that bridge to the peace of mind part of that with our productivity is having that grace that you mentioned to be able to say, I'm going to shift, I'm going to pivot, I'm going to drag and drop on my little calendar, and it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. And I had the biggest pivot of my life in the last week, actually. Obviously I'm building a startup, right? And we've been working on this for the last 5 months, and we realized that we need to pivot away from it. And it was so difficult to make that decision because obviously if it's 5 months of effort going into this and like moving away from an idea that you really liked and really saw potential in is so, so difficult. But obviously my first thought was, oh my God, like I dropped the ball in doing something right. Like I should have never did this, or I should have done it differently so I didn't have to pivot. And all of those like self-doubt questions came up. And my very wonderful co-founder was like, you need to relax. Like it has nothing to do with you. This is not a personal choice. This is not, it's what's right for the company. And we both arrived at the conclusion together. So I think in just having that close group of the community, right? Like that group of people, your tribe, that is so, so helpful because everyone in my circle, some people who've gone through pivots, some women who are pivoting right now with me, some women who are building their own. It's so important to have that voice, building or not, to know that it's not always about your capabilities. Like you could do everything right and still not achieve the goal. And that's totally okay because the goal is, in fact, you putting your best foot forward, not in actually achieving the goal.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I always say like the achieving of the goal is such a small part of the journey. The rest of it is what you're
Yeah.
leaning into, who you're becoming, how you're evolving as a person because of that goal you set, because of that thing that you're working toward. And the pivot that you're going through, that's amazing because that means that like the faster we can figure out what doesn't work, the faster we figure out what does. So it's literally part of the process, which is so beautiful. What you said earlier is like the complexity of it is what makes it beautiful.
No, my God, you said it. You said it best, right? Like the pivot is as the faster we figure out what's not working, the faster we get to what is working is such a beautiful thing to say because it's so true across all fronts. Like I was at Salesforce, I was at Google before this, and oftentimes we're all in roles, and sometimes 2 years down the line, that role is not serving the purpose when you actually when it's not serving the purpose anymore, right? And it's important to always sort of evaluate, are these aligned with your values and like why you started? Are those still true? And then if it's not, be in a position to make a change. I think it's very, very important to constantly evaluate and make sure that what you're doing is in alignment with who you are and what you wanted it to be. Pivoting is the only constant. That's what they always say, right? Like change is the only
Mm.
constant. So keep going.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Yeah, just giving yourself the permission to do that and knowing that it's not a loss, right? Because it's like I've learned something. I've evolved in some way. I've like there's no way. Like for your example, the 6 months and then you're like, "Oh, we're going to change direction actually and not do that anymore." There's no way you're the same person today that you were before that 6 months, right? Like we evolve
Spot
because
on.
of it. Yeah.
No, absolutely spot on. Like I could have now I have I always joke the name of my company was Gambit and I always joke that was Gambit 1.0 and now we're building Gambit 2.0. But now I almost feel like I actually ran that whole company for a long time before I got here. So I already have like so many lessons from it.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how much you can learn in just being present. And it's one of those things that has really enabled me to do this, just that founder journey.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. Well, and we're talking about the shift out of that like busy work and that being stuck, right? But what about people who like actually just stay stuck in the busy work and they don't actually pull themselves out of the mud or pull themselves out of that job that's not right for them or they start the business and it's not working and they just keep grinding at the same thing even though it's not working versus pivoting. Like what do we say to those people who are like, wait a minute, I'm still stuck here. What do I do?
The simplest thing, but the hardest thing anyone's ever said is Nike, which is just do it. It's the
Yes.
easiest thing to do, but it's the toughest thing to implement. But every time, one, I would say it's a couple of things, right? Like one, I would say there is a gut feeling. Everyone has a gut feeling. And I think oftentimes we're taught to sort of subside that like inner voice and don't listen to it because the voice outside is way noisier. So I think that is always there, but that's absolutely fake news. 100% trust your inner voice because in the end, that's the only voice that you need to listen. And that voice is what knows what's right for you. And that's the voice that you're going to be aligned with. So, irrespective of what you hear externally. So, if you feel like at one point, even if it's just a feeling, and if you don't have facts to back it, I think that feeling is very important to lean into when you make those decisions. And secondly, I think it's important to sort of assess the circumstances that you're in, right? Like it'll be very reckless of me to say, if you don't like a job, quit the job. But it's very important for you to know that the circumstances are the circumstances. So the current economy is not conducive of you just moving from one job to another every day. That's not how it works. There are financial limitations for everybody too, and there are different goals, there are different life circumstances for everyone. So when you're stuck in situations, the way I always do is find something else to focus on. If I'm not able to make a change from that current situation, I always take control of my life in another situation. Like
Mm,
especially when you're in sales, like oftentimes like 20% of your deal is sort of outside of your control, which means 20% of your commission check is outside of your control, right? Like you could either win them or you lose them,
yeah.
but it's not going to stop you from putting your best foot forward. So in times like that, when I'm fully pressure tested to perform at my optimal best, but I'm not really enjoying it, I always pick up something that I really enjoy. Like that's probably when I'll start doing like a 5 day workout regime, or I'll start like a new diet, or I'll start meditating, or all of a sudden I picked up painting for a while. Like all of a sudden I'll go pick up pottery. Like I'll find something that is really exciting for me to fill up that bucket when I can't really make the changes in my current environment, because then I'm focusing my energy into something that I really love. And this part of it becomes significantly smaller. So I think it's very important to be intentional, right? Like I think it always comes down to that, recognizing that you need to make the change, but also acknowledging that maybe you don't have it, that you cannot actually make the change in the next whatever 3 6 months, and then finding ways to mitigate that. Because if you're just going to be business as usual and continuing to be stuck in that situation, it's going to make you miserable at the end of it. So we need to find things on a day-to-day basis that make you happy, that sort of
Mm.
tones down the misery that comes from being stuck in a place that you don't want to be in.
Yeah, there's so many good things you're saying here. So like, and I love, it's like, yeah, you don't have to just quit your job today or tomorrow or even next week or next month. But all of those things that you're saying is like we're zooming out and we're looking at the map, right? Like if you're zoomed in on the dot all the way, like if you take your Apple map or your Google map or your Waze or and you zoom in all the way to the dot where you are, and that's all you're looking at, you don't see much. But if you zoom out, you're like, okay, first of all, what else is in my control? Second of
Yep.
all, I love the other piece you said is what else is fun? What else brings me joy? Because what happens when we're more joyful? Better things happen. We show up better, we create better, we bring better results.
No, absolutely. Like the key piece is zooming out, right? I had to train my mind to zoom out of it because oftentimes when you're so close to the problem, problem I use loosely, but oftentimes when you're so close to the problem, it's very, very difficult to rationally think on what's working and what's not. It's almost like taking an inventory, right? Like you always need to take stock on how am I feeling on this front? Am I happy? Am I peaceful? Am I having fun? These three are my metrics. Like it's always these three things for me. Even if one of it is lacking, that's when I know I need to take change or make some sort of a change to or like bridge the gap. But what you said is absolutely true. Like you need to be able to zoom out and sort of get that big picture view of, okay, these are my parts and this is what I can control. This is outside my control and be okay with it. A lot of peace comes from acceptance, right? Like, but
Mm,
with that said, I'm a huge proponent of making changes. If you don't like it, make changes. Don't accept that this is what it is. Like nobody needs that, but make those changes. But it's
yeah.
accepting the reality of it, right? It's accepting that this is
Mm,
the circumstance and being okay with it. And sometimes you might not be able to make the change. It might be completely out of your control, but a lot of it comes down to intentionally accepting that this is what the circumstance is.
yeah. Okay. So it's like what I'm hearing is like we're not just settling, we're accepting the circumstance, we're accepting where we are here now today, and what can I do tomorrow? What can I do differently?
Exactly, yeah, and it's so important because whatever you do, irrespective of the action, it comes from a place of acceptance. Like it first means that you've accepted the reality, and only then you can actually even act on it. If there's no acceptance, you're always going to resist it. You're always going to try to change it, and it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. Yeah, because that creates so much resistance and like friction and like that like then you're again it's zoom that's almost like auto zoom back in. You're like,
Yeah,
wait, I'm
yes.
I'm fighting the problem versus like, okay, slow down, zoom out, be
Yeah.
intentional.
Exactly. You say slow down, but it's so difficult for me to slow down, honestly.
Same.
I don't even know. Like the other day I was at the gym and my trainer was like, relax your shoulders. I was like, what does relax even mean? Like, I'm not quite sure I comprehend this term relax, but I think slow down looks very different to a lot of people. And I think people always think take that 5 day vacation and that means slow down and you'll come back energized. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, if I'm going to Switzerland tomorrow, I'm not going to complain. But with that said, it's important to recognize that sometimes when you go on the vacation, you're probably going to come back even more stressed. Because if you're doing something that doesn't align with your day to day and your heart and mind, it's only going to cause a lot more stress than actually give you a break from it.
Right, yeah, because you're not truly like down regulating your nervous system. You're just stepping away and coming back and your problems are still there.
Exactly. You're just running away for a brief second. Nothing has changed. You're just taking a moment. So I can't tell you the number of times I come back from a vacation stressed because I don't want to deal with the manager or I don't want to go back to work, and it's just so stressful at times. And yeah,
Yeah, I think like the relaxation piece was huge of what you mentioned of like, what does that even mean? Relax your shoulders. You know, they say like, oh, well, I am relaxed. And they're like, well, tell that to, all the wrinkles in your forehead as you're stressed out.
exactly.
And like, but you're like, or tell that to your shoulders that are like up over your ears because you're so tense, right?
So true. Very true. Also, I think a lot of being relaxed and like calm comes from being grateful. I don't think it's being
Mm,
talked about a lot too, because one of the first things I told myself after we decided to pivot was, well, thank God it was only 5 months. Imagine if it was 5 years. And
yeah.
thank God we caught it early on, right? So I think there's always light that could be found in every situation. It's not, I think that could also dub as toxic positivity. And it's not really that. It's more of like a fine balance in acknowledging this is how you feel, but also acknowledging that it could be way worse. And I think that acknowledgement also always dives deeper into like you're relaxing and you're calm, you're not always chasing things, you're not always putting out fires. You need to be in a place where you're thankful for that place that you are in, because a lot of people's dream is to be in the place that you're in today. So I think being grateful really, really helps for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's talked about, but it's not fully truly like understood and integrated, right? They're like, just practice gratitude, just be grateful. But then in reality, you're like, your logical mind's like, okay, but how do I do that? Because I'm behind on this and this isn't happening and this is broken and this is falling apart and right? Like I have to
Yep.
start over. with
No,
this thing.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's always take a gratitude journal and write before you sleep. It's always that. And like I can't write before I sleep. My daughter is screaming, crying. Like and that's not something that I can do. Like I feel the least grateful in that moment, to be fair. But when I can do it is when I wake up in the morning. And it doesn't even have to be writing, right? It's just that mere thought when it occurs to you. Sometimes I would just be driving and like coming back from work or coming back from a cafe and I look at the mountains and like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that it's so green where I live. And it could be like the smallest of things that it always ends up brightening my day and like it zooms out from the reality of it, right? Like it helps you, it puts things in perspective at all times.
Totally. Well, and there's a spin on gratitude. I'm trying to think where I first heard of the idea, but now I do something called, well, I heard about it as like flipping the gratitude from I am so grateful for this because you're like, well, what am I grateful for? But thinking about the things that you want that you already have. And it just
I
switches
love it.
like such an abundance mindset. And so what I started, I love like integrating my thinking and dreaming and things like that with walking. So I kind of piece that together with walking, and I just for my I'm thinking about doing an episode on it actually, but I call it a want walk. And so I go
Oh,
on
I
a
love it.
walk and I'm like, I want, and I started thinking about all the things I have. Like, I want a sister who's like a best friend who went through the same childhood that I can sit down and like really like think through like our behaviors and how to be better and read books together and grow together as adults. That's something I want. And then I immediately feel that in my body like, whoa, I have that. That's pretty cool, right? And then it's just a different spin on gratitude. And then you can switch to things you want that you don't have yet. But it also it brings the goals and dreaming into such an abundance mindset because you just went through all the things that you already have that when you look back and think about it, you're like, wait, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's such an interesting spin because I think very often we forget that where we wanted to be today is where we wanted to act. Where we are today is where we wanted to be 6 months back. I don't think there's enough talked about where you recognize that you actually put in so much work to get you where you are today. And I that narrative is so good. And I'm going to start taking those want walks. Make it 10K walks, remove that. No more hot bell works, remove that. It's more want walk. And I love it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's so fun for me, and it really changed it because sometimes with the gratitude and the dreaming, I either get stuck in like if you've read The Gap and the Gain, right? It's like the gap of what I don't have yet, right? And then forgetting the gain of how far I've already come. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about because what happens too sometimes in life, and I'm actually going through a phase in life myself right now where I have to do this myself personally, is when we're on a journey, we're on a path, and we're working towards something, but then we realize, like you made that pivot in your business, right? But what about instead of just changing, what if you have to actually go back, right? Take a couple steps back to take a few more steps forward in the right direction. Like that can feel so disheartening and almost like zap that gratitude right out of us. How do we approach that?
Yeah, and it's such an interesting thought, right? Because I don't think that is also discussed very often because sometimes progress looks like you're taking a step back, but in fact, you're actually making progress. Like even in this pivot example, what this pivot means is we're back to the drawing board, right? So we're back to
Mm,
our idea. So essentially, that is back to square zero.
yeah.
And but actually, it's back to square one. It's not square zero because we
Mm,
have made so much progress from the time where we started and here. So while it might not look linear and like progress in the most traditional way, moving adjacently is also progress. And I think people
mm,
don't recognize that, just because you take one step forward and two steps back, it still actually means that, no, actually, I said that the other way around. It's two steps forward, one step back is still a step forward, right? Like it's still
yes.
important that you recognize that. And I think it also comes down to that pressure of hitting that goal within a certain time frame. I had
Yeah.
all of these time frames when I did like my initial year beginning planning of like, by Q1, I need to do this and that. By Q2, I need to do this and that. And then look at what happened. By Q1, we are actually not achieving that. We've achieved something completely different.
Yeah.
And while it was not what we wanted, it's still significant progress because now we know that whatever we touch next will be actually a much better idea to work on, right? So even if it's not linear and something that can be quantified in the most traditional way possible, I think it's important to recognize that progress is also not just quantifiable metrics. Progress is also how you feel. It's also how much you've changed
Mm.
and how you've grown. And your experiences every day itself is you making progress. And I think just recognizing that. And like 6 months back, I would have never been able to tell you the lessons that I've learned like in the last 1 week, right? Like I would have never been able to tell you. They all would have just showed up in theory and like just based on other people's experiences. But now I've actually gone through it and now my wisdom sits differently with me. My lessons are way different. And that itself is progress in my eyes.
Yeah, because even when you're taking those two, that one step back, you're going backward as a completely different person. You're walking back on that path, knowing completely different things you would have never known had you not gone in that wrong, quote unquote, wrong, right? What our brain wants to call
Yep.
wrong or bad direction, right?
No,
But you
so
had
so
to
true.
take it to learn that.
Exactly, very true. My dad actually very early on told me one of the quotes was, "A lion always takes 2 steps back before it pounces." So
Oh,
the
I
steps back are
love
not,
that.
yeah, the steps that you take back are not slowing you down or going back in reverse or like going back to square one. It's preparing you to take the largest leap forward.
Mm. Like a wind up.
Yep,
I like
it's just
that.
gearing up. Like that's essentially what you're doing, right? You're
Like
gearing
a
up for the biggest leap. Exactly.
now I'm gonna like picture myself like a lion, like, okay, I'm getting ready,
The
I'm
best
getting
thing.
ready.
The best thing. That's like your morning mirror talk. That's essentially
Yeah.
what it needs to be.
Yes, I'm a lion and I'm stepping back so I can pounce.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's actually why we called our community the Den. When it came down to what we were going to name my female founders community, and the Den just came to me. And then I was thinking about why it just came to me like that from nowhere. And
Yeah,
then I realized that this was why like a couple of weeks back after we launched it.
that is such a cool name, by the way. I love
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
Well, and it goes back to what you said earlier, which is having that grace with yourself, right? Because the timing's not always going to be perfect. The linear path isn't, or the path isn't going to be always linear and perfect and with a pretty little bow and wrapped up perfectly as how we would imagine we want it to be, right? Like you're literally right now, post new baby working on this business, right? That's a lot. And yet you're choosing that intentional progress and making, every little step of the way exactly what you want it to be because of everything you have going on and because of everything you know and are learning with that quote unquote imperfect timing, which when you look at it that way, it sounds actually kind of like it's perfect timing.
Yes. It's things always make sense in retrospect, right? Like I
Yeah.
was during my mat break was when I was part of layoffs that happened at Google. And I've always known I wanted to build my own startup, so I just never went back to workforce. And when I decided to do this, I still interviewed in so many different places, but it would be like a job that I would know that I would get, but I would still get rejected. And that's when I knew that the universe was not aligned with that line of
Mm,
thinking. And at one point, my husband and I were like, "Yeah, I don't think it's going to work. Like, I think we're, going up the wrong wall. And like this is where we make
mm,
all of our dreams come true." So the imperfect timing in retrospect is always perfect timing.
yeah, absolutely. It's so smart to be able to do that and reflect back on it, like how does that actually show up for you guys? Like do you have like a weekly review time, or is it just more spontaneous, like, okay, I really feel like we need to sit down and like reflect on this?
Between my husband and I, or between my co-founder and
Either way, either one
I.
that you're involved in, just for you.
Yeah. So between my husband and I, we have our daily, how was your day? Like, what were your wins and what were not your wins? And like those kind of questions. I think it sounds very cliche to say you need to have those conversations, but I think
Mhm.
having that chat actually, it's more so for you to sort of verbalize what your thoughts are, as opposed to talking about your wins. Like, it's not like a work Slack channel, right? Like, it's not that. And that's how I feel with my co-founder too, because some days we we talk like 5 times a day. And some days we just don't talk about it. We don't even talk. And it's just because we know that the goal is the goal. And irrespective of how much you do every day, it's going to take time. And you need to know that in this space particularly, like you need to know that progress looks very different and progress also compounds. It's not just going to be you do one thing today and then it's never going to show up. That's not how it works. You do something repeatedly for 10 days and for 10 weeks, it will show up. That's literally how it works. So it's that consistent conversations in my mind. And if I'm not chatting with either of them, I have a solid tribe of wonderful women and some incredible besties that live across the world. And I chat with them about everything. Like if I'm thinking, I'm saying. And it's literally my home. And they're all like, my closest family, right? So it's very important to have that clear line of communication. I'm definitely not an introvert by any means, but I don't know how introverts do it where they're not talking about it to other people. But more power to you. That's just not me. I need to be able to voice my thoughts.
I think it's also really important to mention how, when we're on that misaligned path that we talked about, or we're stuck in busy work, there is that friction, there is that anxiety. And yet, when you get on the right path or the right path for right now, and you course correct and pivot, some of those reviews and reflections and conversations and looking in the mirror can also still be difficult. Like sometimes I think there's this idea that, oh, once I'm on the right path, everything will just be great. Like everything will be easy. Once I find the right relationship, we'll never have to have a tough conversation. Once I get the right job or the right
Mm-hmm.
business, I'll never run into bumps. I'll never have to fire anyone, right? But it's not that way. Even when things are good and aligned and like on the right path and you're making that beautiful, messy, complex progress, those reviews and those conversations and reflections can still be really challenging and they're still important to have.
No, 100%. You're so true. I always say it's never going to be not challenging. It's just going to be a different challenge. It's
Yes.
never going to be no challenges, right? And you're so true. Like when I transitioned from, Google to like building my own startup, and I was like, oh my God, like I get to live my childhood dream.
Yeah.
And this is incredible. And I get to do whatever it is that I want. And then I woke up and I was like, great, who am I chatting with today? And there was nobody. There was like no team, there's no crew, and like we're in this together, like that feeling, right? So the discomfort just looks different. That's literally it.
Mhm.
But in the end, it's easier to handle that discomfort when there's alignment because it's a choice that you made consciously. So your mind automatically is more prepared to handle that. And you can last longer term in that situation as opposed to being in a misaligned place and uncomfortable, right? So confrontation with yourself happens every day. Every day, there's a voice in your mind and your heart screaming either the same thing or different things. It's just going to be different and it's just going to feel different when you're doing what you're aligned. Like I chat with my bestie all day, every day. And, we talk about it often where it's like sometimes when you do things that you didn't expect to feel a certain way, you
Mm,
just feel, how that butterflies in your stomach when you feel like you're in love, like that's
yeah.
essentially the feeling that you get when you do something that you were meant to do. Like that's the
Mm,
easiest way to quantify it, but it's more like, oh my God, like I didn't realize that I love doing it, and I didn't realize I
mm.
was meant for this. And sometimes it just clicks. When it just clicks, the confrontations, the discomfort, everything else is valued far lesser than the actual joy of doing it.
Yeah, right. And then when you do it, even though it felt big and hairy and scary, you're like, oh, that was actually easier than when I was in XYZ position unaligned.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, which is why it's so important for you to, be intentional about what you do and like where you go and where you move, because that confrontation and like that reflection becomes so key. And the way you reflect on things is very, very different the minute it's your decision to do so.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And we've covered so much goodness here, so much wisdom, right? And like amazing reflections and things to think about. For the person listening, if you were to give them one thing that if they take nothing else away from this, that you want them to walk away with to either go do differently or think about differently, what would that be?
My favorite quote to live by is don't take yourself too seriously.
Mm,
I think oftentimes it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this would happen to me. Or you go down that line of thinking. And then it's also, I'm too big for doing something like this. Then you go that line of
mm,
thinking. All of those come down to limiting you. You
yeah,
don't need it. Like everyone's incredible. And I think when you don't take yourself too seriously, it adds so much humor into your day to day, which makes your day to day a lot more enjoyable to live through. And I would also say, make that move. It could be, texting someone that you love them or submitting a resume for a job that you thought you were actually unqualified for. Or it could be sending that cold message, that cold email. Or it could be, I wanted to take a day off and I've just been pushing it off. Like, make that move. And then I'm sure like you won't regret it. Like, I think it's always about doing it.
amazing. Thank you. Beautiful words, and it's just such amazing to, hear your perspective and have you share with us, right, how to actually make this real, make this easy, like breathe a little bit more through the process, which is so important to me and to all of our listeners. So, how can we get in touch with you if we want to connect with you or find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn, which is a promise that I made to myself a month back. So I'll continue to be, hopefully, and on Twitter. But I'm also building my own female founders community. So for anyone that's transitioning out of corporate and trying to build their own startup, the founders community is called the Den. And I can send you the link as well, and feel free to join it.
Beautiful. And we'll have that in the show notes for you. And in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us today. It's just been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. This was wonderful to chat.
Thank you for braving the inside of your mind with me. The better we understand ourselves, the more deeply we understand the world. And as our awareness grows, life just gets better and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share this with anyone else you think could benefit from listening. A quick reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, and the discussions here are not a substitute for professional advice. If you're dealing with a specific issue or need personalized guidance, please consult with a qualified professional. Your well-being is important, and this podcast is simply a platform for sharing insights and experiences. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time.